going on? Trey, what's going on, man?
Hey Martin, how's it going?
Good to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is super fun.
This is your first time throwing down
It's
the
my
IG live.
it's my first Instagram live, so
Nice. All hyped up with our what song was that you're playing earlier?
just a little like Britney Spears dance party to get
Just
to get in the mood.
yeah, yeah. Do you have a
Yeah.
dance background as well too, or no?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I started dance and Pilates kind of around the same time.
Nice, nice. So, yeah, so we'll dive into like how you found Pilates or how Pilates found you and all that stuff. Can we just start by just saying like who you are and what you do, and we'll just like go where the conversation goes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm Trey Frye. I am co-owner of a studio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Kinetic Milwaukee. We offer Pilates and Pilates certification, and I'm also a Franklin Method educator. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Do you know Noam as well? Like I know he does a
I
Franklin method.
do. I do. I
There you go.
got so excited when you mentioned his name. He's the best.
He is, man. So can you talk about that Franklin method? Because it's interesting how you guys tie that into Pilates too, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, just talk a little bit about that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. So, Eric Franklin is, of course, the creator of the Franklin Method and, visionary genius as far as movement science and biomechanics and kinesiology. So,
Okay.
been really amazing to spend the time studying with him. So I started studying the Franklin Method in 2009, just taking workshops and,
Yeah.
of course, reading his books. And then there was just a point where I wanted to go deeper. So I did all 3 years of the teacher training,
Wow.
which is a pretty arduous journey, but
Yes.
life
Yeah.
changing. And it's great. So, as far as what Franklin Method is, it's a somatic system.
Okay.
You could think of it, other somatic systems would be like Feldenkrais or the Alexander technique and body mind centering. But, I think Eric's really taken the best of all the existing somatic systems and pushed it forward with cutting edge, movement science and all the latest research on neuroplasticity in the brain. So
Wow. Yeah.
it's not necessarily a form like Pilates or
Mhm.
yoga or gyrotonic, although it has elements of a form as far as ball or band work. But really for me, it was the missing link. And
Okay.
we all talk about mind body,
Yes.
right? And what is that? And for me, it was the missing piece of
Mhm.
being able to use my mind at
Okay.
its fullest capacity as a movement practitioner and as a movement teacher.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit more about what that is? 'Cause I think there's still people out there who'll be like, so what do you do with it now that I have this
Yeah,
3-year cert?
yeah. So I can speak definitely to how I use it as a Pilates teacher.
Yes, please.
Um, we use a lot of imagery in the Franklin work, and that is to help change the nervous system, help change the brain, movement patterning. So there's a whole, idiokinesis component to that, so how to use imagery.
Yes.
And Eric always says, if you're going to use imagery, in order for it to be a good image, it needs to be based in science or the truth of how
Okay.
the body moves.
Yes.
And I think each year of the Franklin training is really unique. The first year we focus on what we call the bone rhythms. So how all the bones, most of the bones in the body move in sporadic rhythms in
Hmm.
real time, and how to embody and coach that to have maximal efficiency
Yes.
and dynamic alignment. And then in year two, we dive into muscles and fascia, right? So looking
Yes.
at what we call myofascial slings. Of course, some people use the word trains or
Yes. Yes.
meridians, right, right, right. Everyone
Hmm.
has their own languaging. So looking at how the full body thinks from a muscular and fascial perspective. And then the capstone year, the third year, is looking at the organs, right? How
Okay.
all of our organs have joint interfaces and they move like joints in movement, and how to embody that and motivate movement from the most organic perspective,
Right. That
right?
is, we're just like geeking out on like high level movement stuff right now.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, that's fascinating. I mean, like some people just want to just move and let their clients
Hmm.
feel good, and others want to understand the why behind every single intentional move. Um, when I was in, well, I still am in personal training, but I always gravitate to trainers who or instructors or coaches who said we train the movement, not the muscle.
Right, right. I mean, the body, the brain doesn't think single muscle, right? The
Right.
body thinks movement.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So going from, concentration curls and like bench press to understanding how you can use like the TRX or how you can move with a Viper or multi-joint, multi-planar movements. This sounds like this is in that same line of thinking. Okay, it's one thing to just do Pilates, it's another thing to understand what's happening with your bones right now, what's happening with your organs right now, what's happening with the fascia around those muscles right now.
Yeah, it just gives the work so much more depth and creativity, and you're really able to move or teach from a
Mhm.
deeply embodied perspective, which I think is very different than just do
Yes.
an exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a few people on, well, your people on here as well. I see Kiva Price is a physical therapist. I had her on a few weeks ago. Um, the question I have for you with the Franklin method, then, do you feel like you have longer with your clients before you have to refer them out to an osteo or a physiotherapist or athletic therapist type people because you have a little bit more understanding?
That's a great question. I'm a big believer in scope of practice,
Yes.
and I have a great referral network of PTs and
Mhm.
osteos and chiros. So I work in
Sorry, can you
conjunction
can you say that again? Having a great network
of like physio,
yes.
PTs and chiros and osteos and body workers. I refer out. I'm a big
Yes.
believer that we can do a lot as movement educators, but our scope of practice is what it is. And I think that's an important thing for us, or for any movement educator, to realize. We're
Agreed.
not a one-stop shop. We need a whole tribe of people to support our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always preach that personal trainers, Pilates instructors, everyone, we need to know what we can do, what our scope of practice is. Sorry. So yeah, so back to the original question. Like, do you feel like you're more competent to be able to do a little bit more before you hand them off?
Yeah, I feel like I have a broader skill set and I have more tools in my toolbox for sure. But at the end of the day, I definitely am a big fan of referring out.
Yes. Yeah. 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 This is a comment from Kiva here. Physical therapists and doctors would likely love to refer to someone with this Franklin method background. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Kiva.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's it.
it's amazing work.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very, very in depth. Like that'll definitely quench your thirst if you're dying for more.
Yeah.
How did you find Pilates?
So I found Pilates really, the whole thing was by accident. So I was a heavy kid, and when I was 13, I started a weight loss journey and hated the gym.
Mhm.
Just for a young teenager in a loud, noisy gym with all these,
Clanging weights and grungy
yeah, it just
people.
was an intimidating environment. And
Yeah.
so one of my friends, my girlfriends, said, "Hey, you should come take this hip hop dance class with me. It's really good cardio. You'd like it." Right. And looking back, I think it was the first positive movement experience I ever had.
Yes.
So I was doing this for a month or so. And then one night, the teacher didn't show to teach class. And the owner of the dance studio waltzes in, and this is a woman who had, an MFA in modern dance from, TCU, had done some work with the Merce Cunningham Dance Company. And she
Yes.
looked at all of us and she just said, "We're going to do real dance tonight. And if you don't like it, you can leave." And, I was
Oh, okay. Yeah.
13, 14. I didn't have, my parents were picking me up at the end of the class, right? So I was
Right.
forced to stay. And she taught what I would now know as a like Graham technique, modern dance class with a
Yes.
live drummer and all. And the
Wow.
same woman also owned the Pilates studio that was a block away from the dance studio. So we were highly encouraged. You could read that as forced to do
Right.
Pilates. And
Yes.
I really just fell in love with it, and I think part of it, I love the work. And I also really appreciated the safe space that the Pilates studio afforded.
Yes. And safe space compared to the scary gym.
Yeah, for me as a teenager and figuring out who I was as a queer person in East
Mhm.
Texas, that was an interesting
Yes.
environment, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I really am so thankful that I had that safe space at that time in my life. And still, I still think the Pilates studio is a haven for so many people.
Yes, absolutely. You had that on one of your posts about, I loved it, about saying that something about those in need of inclusion don't have the luxury of, um, I can't remember, like, if you can remember the post, but it's something along the
Yeah.
lines of the fact that it's like you're saying, as a queer person or myself as a black person or someone who is almost marginalized, maybe that was the word, marginalized, doesn't have the luxury of taking time off from this message of inclusion, something
Hmm.
along those lines. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think it was a post just talking about how, everyone's feeds are starting to go a little bit more silent in regards to some of the social justice stuff happening right now.
yes,
So it's definitely important for me to keep that conversation going as an ally.
yes. No, I appreciate that. And I did an article just recently, and I was saying that I look at, without judgment, but I'm always curious to find out, like, what were your 10 posts before your black screen and what are your 10 posts after your black screen?
Mm, mm-hmm.
And just to get a gauge of where your heart is at. And not to say, it could be that you've chosen to not use social media as your main message for getting that out, but I just feel like that sometimes is a reflection of where you're at. And yeah, so when I saw, like that one about just inclusion and not taking time off from this message, I thought that was powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, Kiva had a question here. Is there a directory for those certified in the Franklin method?
There is. You can go to franklinmethod.com, and I believe there's a search option for licensed educators.
Hmm. Nice. And now you run a studio.
I do. I do.
Okay.
I co-own Kinetic Milwaukee with Meg Hopkins, who I think is on right now. Her handle is Lids Hair Markets, her other thriving business.
Okay.
And the studio just turned 3 in April. So
Nice.
it's officially a toddler
Nice.
uh,
Yes.
in the time of a pandemic.
Right.
But yeah, it's been great.
Very cool. So what do you guys do there?
Yeah, so we're a fully equipped Pilates studio. Hey Mag, and we are a education center for Peak Pilates. We run their full certification program.
Right. Right.
We're also a rental space for teachers. So the way that we have set the studio up is that we provide a space for teachers to have their own businesses within the studio. So they're true
Cool.
independent contractors,
Nice.
and they just pay us rent at the end of the month, and they get to have their own business within the space. And I think it's a really good long-term strategy for a certain type of teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. That's basically the model that I'm hoping to run here. This is a really, really new studio. And so I feel like that's a really great way to get people in because not everyone has the business acumen. Like some people want to just come in and just help people. And they don't want to be like tied down with all the administrative back end and overhead and this and that and the other. So this is like almost a good gateway. And some people will stay there and some people will use that to launch off onto bigger projects too, right?
Yeah, agreed. I think part of our vision was that we wanted to create a space that sets people up for lifelong success in the industry so that they're
Yes.
competent on every level of skill that they need to have. Of course, it's teaching, but also all the administrative work, marketing, social media, etc.
Yes.
And so if they do choose to open their own space, they are extremely well equipped and will thrive.
Amazing. Do you do like business coaching and like all the back end stuff as well for people?
I really want to give a shout out to Meg, my other half. That's really her background.
Okay.
I tend to look at myself more as an artistic director of the space, and she
Okay.
is the nuts and bolts and the business side. She comes from a pretty long corporate retail background and is an
Okay.
entrepreneur at heart.
Staff to your weaknesses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So how many trainers do you have working in there now?
Right now we have 3 teachers that are kind of in and out of the studio. One is more full time, and then of course with the pandemic, things have been a little, things have
Yeah.
filtered out slightly. But we're thinking ahead already to really optimizing the space for renters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have a suspicion that we're going to see a lot of studios close by year end,
Right.
and I really want to set the studio up to be a safe space for people to bring their clientele.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see High Octane 93 just jumped on. That's Andrew, the owner of the gym that my studio's in. And I'll definitely connect you guys after because like we were basically running the same play in terms of just allowing it to be a space where people can grow their business and be set up for success, whether they stay or whether they leave, right? So
Right.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think,
Sorry.
what were you going to say?
No, please go ahead. Sorry. Go
I think part of my vision too with the space is that, having been in the industry for a little bit, I really had reflected on, the all the studios I worked in, what worked, what didn't work, what my frustrations were. And with all that in mind, I wanted to create a space that let people, really succeed, um,
Mhm.
and, let them shine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I there's a question I usually ask people, and it's around their ideal client. But
Mm,
for you, I'll ask it in two ways. One, like who is your ideal client that you like to work with, and who is the ideal like Pilates instructor that you'd like to see come in to be able to grow their business in your space?
Great questions. As far as like my ideal client, at the end of the day, I think it's anyone that wants to or is willing to put up with me.
Okay, okay.
I don't have a specific demographic I target. I mean, I
Yeah,
think we all know that we need a certain type of client that um, can help pay our bills, so that
yep.
it takes a certain level of you know financial freedom. But I would say from early on, I've generally attracted clients with some interesting injuries and body stuff. So from an early teaching age, that has been so. So I think any teacher that is a common theme that does tend to change or develop your teaching a certain way.
Right,
Um,
absolutely.
but I really love it all, Martin. I really love working with a broad range of clientele from, post rehab all the way to elite athlete.
Hmm.
And I think that's also too the skill of a great teacher is that, you as a teacher can morph best to serve the body in front of you.
Of course. And at the same time, it's good that you can do that. Who does your world stop for, right? Like if I have like a guy walk in, he's like, I've never tried Pilates before, and my wife said I need to show up. I'm like, let's go. Like this is gonna be fun, right?
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's gone to like 15 different Pilates studios and they're like, I want to show up and I'm just gonna do some Pilates because I want to get a six pack. Then I'm like, all right, let's go. It's a different kind of let's go.
It's a different kind of let's go, but at the end of the day, you have to meet that person where they are and hopefully give them the session of their life so that they enjoy it. It's a positive movement experience and they stay in love with the work and they come back.
Yes. You're such a better person than me.
Well, I definitely would say too, I think that was a big transformation in my teaching going through the Franklin work, right? Is that we have a whole paradigm that we call student-centered teaching.
Yes.
And I think most forms are still being taught from a teacher-centered perspective, which is, how academia is taught, definitely how dance is taught, where there's a teacher on a podium and they're disseminating down. But from a student-centered perspective, you know, the student ends up being our teacher, and it's so much more of a fresh and a collaborative experience.
Yes. Oh, I agree. I agree. Yeah. So that's gonna be an interesting soundbite afterwards. But yeah. So then the instructors that come in, then do you look for someone who has more of a corrective exercise perspective, someone who looks at it from a fascia perspective and all those different things, or you just like whoever comes in, we all can learn together type thing?
Yeah, I definitely think as far as the renters in the studio, um, I'm definitely more on the classical end of the spectrum, even though I have, a diverse background. I generally want that flavor of teaching in the studio because I think it's too confusing for the clients otherwise.
Yes.
There needs to be some level of consistency.
Hmm.
But really, Martin, it's for anyone that wants, I think this model works for a certain type of person that it definitely is more of a go-getter and is willing to do the legwork to build a practice.
Yes.
So I think it's
That's
that kind of person
yeah.
specifically.
That's exciting. So guys, reach out if you want to, if you're in that area. What do you do virtually? Do you have a lot of, have you made like a pretty strong pivot to virtual with everything that's been
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, I definitely will say I have a lot of like my friend group of teachers or my generation of teachers. I was one of the last to go virtual, and I was actually
Okay.
really resistant for a long time. I'm
Hmm.
really an analog, hands-on teacher,
Yes.
and I always thought, oh, it's not the same. You can't use your hands. You can't see as well, and then March happened and we all had to pivot as much as we all love that word right now.
Hmm.
And I spent a couple of days with some teacher friends and we just figured out, okay, like what's the best audio? What's the best lighting? What's the best camera angle?
Oh, that's
And
good.
I think there was so much grace in all of us figuring it out so quickly that we were allowed to make mistakes and it didn't have to be perfect. It could be a little messy and everyone was fine with that. And it's been such a fun adventure. I think it's definitely warmed up the waters for me wanting to do more virtual.
Yes.
So that's awesome. But I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, I've gotten to work with some of my students from when I lived in Texas and people from, all over the world. And I actually feel like my eye has gotten more refined.
Yes,
Looking
absolutely.
at a screen, I feel like my verbal cueing has gotten more
So
precise
sharp.
and more,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yes.
it's been pleasantly, I've been pleasantly surprised with the virtual experience, and I'm so
Yes.
excited just to keep it going.
Oh, absolutely. And then, it's funny, if our clients weren't owning their work more and seeing results still and coming back, I think I'd be more inclined to give up on the virtual. But because it's actually working, I'm like, okay, let's keep this part of what we do, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going anywhere, right? I
It's not
think
going anywhere.
it's been established, and
Hmm.
I'm so excited to see where it goes. And on a selfish level, I mean, I've gotten to take weekly with my favorite teachers and just be a student again.
Right. Yes.
So that's been such a gift.
Yeah. And Trey's been amazing at virtual work.
Thank you, Sally Ann.
Yeah. Someone else put something up there too. Like yeah. Oh, we love you, Trey.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Cyan.
And I feel like even for my clients who are now returning to the studio, I still want to weave in the virtual piece and make that a supplement to their work, and not just say,
Totally.
okay, we're back in the studio, so we'll just drop the virtual altogether. It's like, well, no, well, you have me Monday and Wednesday. Let's try a virtual on Friday. Let's try that. You know what I mean? And let's have that as part of their work. Let it be a supplement to what they're doing, and not let go of it. One, because we may go into another lockdown, and two, because it keeps some ownership on them for their work.
Totally. Right. And then, we can look at the virtual as, like live virtual classes. We could look
Mm-hmm.
at building a whole library of
Library.
classes that could be a subscription model for clients or a single purchase
Yes.
point of sale thing for our businesses, for our clients. So I think there's
Mm-hmm.
the virtual can be a whole separate revenue stream for our businesses.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned, I think every Pilates studio needs to be a fully equipped, photo video studio at this point, right? That
Right.
that is the future.
That is. And one of the little tips that I took from Erica Quest the other day too is I'm just going to start to record everything. Like when I do a
Yeah,
virtual, say I'm doing a live virtual with somebody in the background, record it because you could still harvest like, a walkthrough of the ab series of five or a walkthrough of whatever. And then you can just pull that. So I don't have to sit down and set up and do a full talk through. I can just basically just use my old clips, maybe even take my verbal cues out of it and then do a voiceover on it. So I'm recycling my content just from a class that I'm already using. So there's so many different ways to build our library for whatever we want to do with it. So
totally. Yeah. Or like, like I'm recording a lot of my live Zoom classes that are just being recorded to the cloud, and then the trainees and the certification program can actually go back and watch those as observation hours, since it can be a
yes.
little dicey right now having, a more crowded space. So
Mm.
it's a great way to mitigate or navigate, trainees getting observation hours when they
Oh
don't have
yeah,
to
that's
be in
right.
the
I forgot about that.
studio on top of clients.
Yeah, that's so smart. And even for the clients too, like they love as much as clients are so gracious and allow people to come and learn in our space. I like giving clients their space too, because sometimes I want to have a more personal conversation and all these different things. You still keep it a safe space for them, but make it accessible for future teachers at the same time. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good. Can we talk about Peak Pilates, like how you ended up
Yeah.
master trainer with them? Because I love Peak. I did my comprehensive with them and Pamela Garcia, and I was
Love
in her.
Pam. She's
She's
amazing.
oh yeah, yeah. I have a funny story about her, but well, let's talk Peak first.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's been a really interesting, like full circle moment. My first teacher mentor was Colleen Glenn in Dallas, Texas, and I was in her last certification program that was hers, and then she moved to Boulder and created Peak's program,
Okay.
right? In collaboration, of course, with Zoe and Claire,
Claire
right?
Gunther, yeah.
So it was interesting, a friend of mine that is a master instructor for Peak recommended me because they were looking for talent. And at first, I actually just said no. I'm like, no, I'm not interested.
Hmm.
You know, and then they reached out again, and it just opened, I think, a broader conversation. I think I was in the right headspace to
Okay.
go that route.
Yes.
And it's such a great organization, such a great company, such a great, certification program. So I
Yeah.
couldn't be more excited. I'm definitely, the new kid on the block as far as the master instructor team, and I'm
Yes.
loving leaning on all of the incredible talent within the organization. I
Absolutely.
feel like I've grown by leaps and bounds just in
Oh,
the
for sure.
year that I've been on board with Peak.
Right. And now, was part of their recruiting the fact that you're a male as well?
Um, I mean, that's never been spoken directly to, but of course I can't rule it out, right? I'm sure, as you know, Martin, I think male Pilates teachers are more like unicorns in the industry.
Yes.
And yeah, so that of course could be a factor, but
Mhm.
I would also like to think that just my longevity and my um, ability was a factor as well.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna just. You're good. No question. I'm not saying like, you like. I'm sure like you're like technically solid and a male makes it a bonus.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's great to see more men coming into the industry. That's incredible.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've had experience of being the only guy in a education course, right? And I feel
Right.
like that's
Yeah.
definitely changing. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every time I'm on a Zoom class, I'm like going through. I'm like, there's a guy. For example, Wednesday, Michael Plunkett is coming on, and I did a class with Chris Robinson, and noticed he was the only other dude in the room. So as soon as it was done, before the class was over, he had already reached out to me while I was reaching out to him. Right? Like there's this
Nice.
camaraderie of just like, okay, I found another one, like sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know. So it's but that's good, and I think that, like you said, like seeing more guys, or I guess discovering more guys that are doing Pilates is good, because I really feel like men need this, and it really is a game changer for them, from the weekend warrior to the 100% sedentary person. Like it's going to be such a life giving thing for them to get Pilates in their body and in their exercise routine.
Yeah. It's incredible work, right? For everybody, but especially the male practitioner. And I think us as male instructors, teachers, I think we become beacons, right? And we
Yes.
show that Pilates just isn't for female practitioners, which I think the statistic, right, is like 90% of people doing Pilates are women,
Right.
right? So we can be beacons and examples of, you know, male practitioners and teachers. I think by nature, we tend to attract more male clients.
Right, right, right. Do you have any strategy for getting more men into your studio, or do you just let it organically happen?
I think building up a referral base is always great.
Yeah.
I think Pilates really speaks for itself as far as building referrals. I think people can be more strategic in their marketing, as
Hmm.
far as the images they're using, the language that they're using. So it's not, uh, it doesn't repel or
Yes.
deflect from potential male clients.
Right, right, right. We've had that conversation in the past about gender-centric cueing.
Mm,
Roll down from, roll up to your bra line, or like reach, those kind of cueing that leave, guys in our class like, Like, I mean, like what? So even just our phraseology, right? Like just being more intentional with that as well helps.
Yeah, I think, I mean, of course, right? You're always adapting your cueing to the body in front of you, right? And I
Yes.
think you're really cautious that you're not using cueing or languaging that would intimidate or put off male practitioners or
Mhm.
clients.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So we were talking earlier, just before we got on, just about centering.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that word centering because it has so many different levels to it. So when you were saying like how Pilates like helps kind of centering, like what did you mean when you used that
Yeah.
word?
I was really speaking in specific regards to this whole, pandemic experience.
Yes.
I couldn't be more thankful for Pilates during all
Hmm.
of this. It's
Hmm.
been such a anchor, right? To be able
Yes.
to be centered in the midst of daily change and flux and
Hmm.
chaos. And I don't think I would have been able to navigate this terrain as well as I have had it not been for the work.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said earlier, like because of everything being virtual as well, that allowed us to connect with more people and with special teachers that usually aren't as accessible. So it helps us to not only survive but thrive during this time, would you say?
Yeah, agreed, agreed. It's been incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of your own teaching, how can I put this? I don't want to say like who have you spoken with or stuff, but like, have you found that certain teachers have been um, real like game changers in terms of your own the way that you practice?
Mm. Um, as far as virtual goes, or just at
Yes,
large?
yeah, in terms of virtual.
Yeah, I've it's been great for me because I've gotten to really spend more time with the teachers I already love spending time with,
Yes.
right? So people like Blossom, right, who's on
Oh, yes.
tomorrow.
Right.
I've gotten
It's a
to
great
work,
segue. Yes.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
gotten to, work with her numerous times a week.
Hmm.
Amy Lang, who is an incredible teacher and is maybe a little less known because she's not on social media and doesn't have a
Right.
website, which I love her for.
Hmm.
But Amy taught the Pilates Center in Boulder from the early '90s on, and is now in
Okay.
Reno. And so, we actually there's a group of us that we had to teach her how to use Zoom, and so that's been amazing to work with her. And then, I've been working with Catherine Coyle, uh, Zoe Trapp's daughter, who's on the master instructor team and leadership team
Okay.
at Peak
Yes.
weekly, and people like Lori Coleman Brown, who's in Seattle, and Teresa Shoup, that owns Atlas Pilates, where Lori teaches. So those have
Yes.
kind of been my go-to people throughout
Amazing.
this whole experience. And it's great. I mean, I don't have to get on a plane and go across country to
Right.
take lessons or study with people. So it's been really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about these core conversations. Like you mentioned a lot of those names, and some of them I had heard before, and some of them I haven't. And like you said, like some of them aren't even on social media. There are so many people out there that are doing such great work, and we only know like a corner of this world,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so you just mentioned some people I'm definitely going to follow and look out for and try and learn from as well. And I encourage everyone who's watching to do the same. Like, keep connecting and learning from different people. Have different eyes on you as well, right? Like,
There's so many good teachers out there, and you can learn something from everybody,
yes,
no
absolutely.
matter where they are on the Pilates spectrum.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you spend a lot of time talking? Like we talked about the classical and just like that's like what you have in the studio. But what's your thoughts on this dialogue between classical and contemporary? Which, like on a sidebar, I love the fact that during this time that hasn't been the dialogue. Everyone's just
Yeah.
in survival mode, and everyone's just well, let's just keep our people moving. Like I love that it's moved away from it. But what's your thoughts on that in general, just
Oh, it's
classical
like,
and
why are we
contemporary?
still having this conversation?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, why is it still a thing? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
over it.
Right. Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
I think what to me is much more interesting than looking at specific exercises or orders, the way a form is taught is looking at, the philosophy of return to life, right? I
Hmm.
mean, to me, that is Pilates. It doesn't matter, what list of exercises you're doing or,
Yep.
what school or camp you fall into. And if you're really teaching Mr. Pilates philosophy, you're teaching Pilates, right? So you're
Right.
teaching full body health and
Yes.
detoxification
Yep.
and oxygenation
Hmm.
and, really returning a body, mind, spirit back to its most healthful um, place, then you're teaching Pilates fabulously.
Yes. I was going to ask you that. Like, what would you, from your perspective, what is the main message of return to life? And you hit it there, that like all those different pieces. And I say the same thing to my clients. Like, it's what about sleep? Like, he talks
Hmm.
about sleep. He talks about rest. He talks about play. Like,
Diet.
diet,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's the complete exercise system for a reason. And you need to look at your body completely to be able to reach that optimal health.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
agreed. I think we get down a rabbit hole of looking at, well, this person teaches this exercise this way or whatever we do, right? And we
Yeah.
lose focus of the bigger picture. And at the end of the day, we're just helping our clients be healthier and more vibrant on this planet at this
Yes.
time. And that's what we should be focusing on.
Absolutely. And I love looking at the why, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you come back to those exercises, more important than, do I have my fingers wrapped around the bar? Do I have my fingers pointed out? It's like, well, why are we doing this exercise in the first place?
Yeah.
What muscles are we working with? What is supposed to be engaged? What's supposed to be relaxed? When do I breathe? Not getting fussy with it, but letting people just understand what's happening in their body at the same time.
Right, right. And looking at the intention behind it, right? Because an exercise can be taught in a way that returns a body to a state of health just as quickly as it takes it away from that state, right? So it's really just
Yes.
looking at the intention behind the gesture.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that concludes the contemporary versus classical discussion. We can move
Yeah,
on from
it's
there.
over. Like, why are
It's
we still
over.
having it?
Right. Yeah. It was just, I think it was neat to watch it just diminish over the last few months. Like, really,
Mhm.
honestly, it has really disappeared in many ways. And I like that.
It's been great, and I really hope that that's the trajectory we move forward with. It's just not an interesting conversation at this
Mhm.
point, and it's not a conversation that's going to bring us together as an industry. It's divisive, it's separating, and that's just not what we need
Right.
at this point.
Yeah. Or at any point.
Any
Right.
point, yeah,
Right. Yeah. That's true. And
yeah. I'm
yeah.
much more interested in conversations that are collaborative and you know, uplifting and bring us together because I think we have so much rich and diverse talent in our industry. I'm more interested in um, coming together and being able to experience everyone's gifts.
Absolutely. So would you say in general, like that's like your message for your students and for this community right now, is just come together in any way?
I think that's always my message,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I'm definitely like a community person. I'm a connector personality type,
Yes.
and yeah, I think yeah, of course.
Yes. Nice. So what's next for you guys? What's next for your studio?
I think I can only think as far right now as just mitigating the next 6 to 12 months,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really narrow focus, but it's just trying to make sure that we all survive this experience as tactfully and healthfully as possible, right? And that
Mhm.
the business continues to thrive, the teachers in the studio continue to thrive and feel supported. Um, and it really is just more of the same, right? Of just continuing to create a space that um, people can learn and grow and build solid businesses in. Are you
Yeah,
back?
I'm back, Sarah.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, Sarah. Yeah. Yes. Just got a phone call right in the middle, so I couldn't lock it off there fast enough. I'm like, no. Okay.
I was worried
Um,
that was going to happen too. I was like, "Where's my phone on silent?" Like,
yeah, no, no, it's all good. See, and this is like that's just how like organic and authentic these conversations are. Like, I mean, I've had like kids running by in the background and like just this noise and whatever. Like it's all good. Like the main point is just like just having you on, just being able to just talk through what you do. And I love just celebrating like the work that you do from the perspective that you come from, where it is really about movement. It is about celebrating what people can do
Mhm.
and just diving deep with their movement to understand their bodies and how like that like we said earlier with this Franklin method, just that dialogue between from organs right out to your extremities, right?
Yeah, I mean, really moving, being able to move and be moved from our most natural and organic places and spaces, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I remember having a really interesting moment during my first year with Eric Franklin about, we were, of course, talking about the bone rhythms and how the bones spiral and embodying that. And I had this awareness of like, wow, like we're embodying our own, we're embodying the deepest fundamental, like universal truths and laws. And by doing that, we begin to energetically align more with the universe itself, right? Now,
Yes,
not to get too woo woo, but I live there.
yes.
But there's a certain truth to the more that we can align ourselves with universal truth, the
Mhm.
more the universe begins to align with us.
Yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. Funny story from my peak Pilates training. So we had, I was working at Lifetime at the time, so Pam was flying in for our modules, and you're just talking about that body and skeletal connection and all these different things. In front of the group, she was talking about our alignment for something. I was staying at the front, and she called me up, and then as she's explaining this thing, she just looks at me. She's like, "Take your shirt off." I was like, okay. And from there, she was able to just like really explain, well, this alignment, da da da, all these different things. But it's one of those moments where like you know how like she's very like direct, and her teaching is so
Mhm.
like her cues are so crisp and all these different things. So when she said it, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna. And it's this moment of like, okay, let's go. Like pretty embarrassing moment, but not really. But it's just
Yeah.
interesting how in that moment you just kind of just go with the flow because she's trying to get to a point, and that point made sense for everybody to just see a skeletal alignment as we're talking about those different things. So I just thought it was funny we were talking about those
Yeah.
different alignments.
She's Pam's amazing,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
that's, only something you would ask of a male client.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's too
Yeah.
funny. It's all good. So yeah, so we did touch on that. We talked about being centered, being grounded, and being healthy.
Mhm.
How do you define healthy?
On every level from micro to macro, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I think that's been another silver lining of this whole experience too, is that I really looked at what I'm consuming, both nutritionally, but also, through media or on any level, what I'm filtering into my consciousness
Yes.
and my every system in my body, and did a major cleanse, right? I mean, from a nutritional perspective, and it's so funny, right? We talked about how Mr. Pilates talked about this and both
Yes.
Return to Life and in Your Health. Um, looking at, okay, like what can I do to best arm myself against COVID, right? I know that
Hmm.
I can do a major nutrition overhaul and make sure I'm eating in a way that supports my immune system. And, I've started meditating again, which I had kind of filtered out of for a little bit. And, looking at just really limiting, you know, especially like some news media at times, just
Yes.
being taking breaks from mental health and
Hmm.
just making sure that I'm really taking care of myself, because if I'm not in a good place, I can't be in the best place for everyone around
Right.
me.
Yes. Yes. You're doing a great job of setting example, like leading by example with that, taking care of yourself, spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah, which I think is what we do anyways as movement educators, right? We become living examples or truths for those around us too.
Yep.
We're raising the vibration of everyone around us.
Hopefully, like
Yeah,
sometimes we're like,
hopefully.
to me that the reality is that we get enamored with just trying to just survive, trying to make our money, trying to keep our studios open, and trying to, what I mean? So it's easy to let something slide, and so kudos to you for like revisiting, like, what are you taking in from a media perspective? What are you taking in? nutritionally and all those different things. That helps, like it shows that it can be done in spite of the climate that we're in. Still, move towards your best version of yourself.
Totally. I mean, especially right now, we only have jurisdiction over ourselves
Mhm.
and our immediate environment. So those
Yeah.
things are really important.
Yes, absolutely. All right, man. So we're almost done. What's your kind of closing message for your students, for our community, just as we log off here?
Keep moving and keep taking care of yourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Trey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your
And thank
time.
you for having. Thank you for letting me do my first Instagram live. So
You
fun.
you did great, man. Like, I mean, it's just a chill conversation, right? Like,
Yeah,
we'll
it's
just
just
we just
talking with a friend.
there you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm gonna connect you with Andrew afterwards, and if you have any other questions for Trey, just about like his business or just his philosophy, virtual classes, workshops, anything coming up, like please put it in the comment section later, just so people can find and connect with you, man. And we'll just keep cheering you on as you do your thing in Milwaukee.
Likewise. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow with Blossom.
Yes, it's gonna be fun. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you,
All
Martin.
right. All right. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today on Core Conversations. This organic platform has been made possible by amazing people like yourself. So if you're a Pilates instructor or a movement specialist of some kind and you want to be a guest, please message me. If you're in some other field and the messages just resonate with you, message me. I'd love to have you on. All of our messages connect, and for some reason, they all help us in this battle. We're all in this game together, so I'd love to hear from you. Let your words be life to someone else. Check out our website, personalvictory.ca. Click the Core Conversations page to see who our upcoming guests are, and I will see you next time on Core Conversations.